The book of Second Thessalonians, that is the overview of the second epistle of Paul to the Thessalonians. So the author, as we all know, is the Apostle Paul. Date written, probably written from the Corinth, shortly after the first epistle, between AD 50 and AD 54. The purpose of this epistle, which is the second book or letter to the Thessalonian church, the main purpose is, it actually is apparent that certain expressions in Paul's first epistle to the church had been misinterpreted. So when Paul wrote First Thessalonians about the coming of Jesus Christ and rapture, they did not understand him well. So that caused Paul to write the second epistle. When he had referred to the uncertainty of the time of Christ's coming or Christ's return, his words had been understood as teaching that the day of the Lord had come. But that's not what Paul was saying. Paul was rather trying to tell them that they should prepare, because Jesus said he doesn't know he can come in any day. So it's found in this Second Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 2. This resulted in the undue excitement. The converts were shaking in their mind. In other words, when they heard about the first epistle, that Jesus could come at any time. So they were entertaining wrong view as to the nearness of the Lord's advent. In other words, Jesus' coming, which unsettled their lives. So they thought that, Paul has written that Jesus will be coming soon, or Jesus could be coming soon. So they were happy, and people were like, let's all wait for that. But Paul was saying that we should wait for it anytime, whether 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 100 years. That's what he was trying to tell them. And Paul's purpose was to correct this perspective, the kind of notion and the kind of mindset they had when Paul wrote the first epistle. So he wrote the second just to correct them that, hey, this is what I mean. I'm not saying Jesus is coming the following year or the following month, but I'm saying the nature and the doctrines and everything that Christ has given me as an apostle. I'm reminding you, it becomes a doctrine that everybody can come. Generation will keep on preaching it. They will preach on to another generation. So that is what Paul was talking about. So Paul's purpose was to correct their perspective. Some have thought from the wording of verses chapter 2, verse 2 to 3, that the church had received a forged kind of letter which had added fuel to the fire, because when Paul was writing the first one to them, others also were giving wrong information. So they thought Jesus was coming within that time. This is purely conjectural. You see, it's like coincidental. These two things came to meet each other. So it was sending wrong information to the church. So there is not much doubt that the epistle was responding to an excited state of the church, because they thought Jesus was coming when they received the first epistle. Okay, to whom written? It was written to the church in Thessalonica, the same church in Thessalonica. The main theme was about the second coming of Christ, like the first epistle, preparation towards that. But Paul is authenticating that. Yes, of course, Jesus said he will come back. He taught about it in Matthew 24, the end time, how everything is going to unfold. So Paul is writing to them that it could happen at any time. Okay, the key words for 2 Thessalonians, the key words there are day of Christ, and then also that day. Okay, because he also, here we're going to spend a lot about, Antichrist. There's a name that Paul gives. Jesus already has said it in Matthew 24. So he's going to talk about that. Those are going to be the signs that Jesus is coming back. So the day of Christ, which is chapter 2, verse 2. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 2. And then that day, these are the key words. Day of Christ. And then that day, they were repeated over and over and over. Okay? Chapter 1, verse 10. Chapter 2, verse 3. And chapter 3, which is the key verse, chapter 3, verse 5. So we look at the analysis, the synopsis, okay, how it has been divided. The epistle may be divided in 3 parts. So part 1 will cover only chapter 1. Part 2 will cover chapter 2 and chapter 3. And part 3 will cover part 2 will cover chapter 2, and then part 3 will cover chapter 3, because it's only First Thessalonians is 5 chapters, 2 Thessalonians is only 3 chapters. So each division covers 1 chapter. So let's dive into it. The epistle may be divided in 3 parts. Chapter 1, the greeting and thanksgiving. Paul greeted them and thanked them for how they were happy about the coming of the Lord, all the teachings. But Paul is going to end it somewhere, okay? And then number 2 of chapter 1 is comfort and future things. So 2a says words of comfort to the church in persecution. Okay? They were already going through persecution, so Paul was talking about that you never give up, which is chapter 1, verse 4 to 6. And then B, a sharp contrast is drawn between the glorious destiny of believers at the advent of Christ and the fate of the impenitent wicked. So he's trying to tell them that there's going to be a huge difference. Those who know Jesus is coming, it doesn't matter whether they are falling before, whether they're weak or whether, at least they know. So when that day comes, they will know. But those who are wicked, those who don't like God, who don't like Jesus, they don't want to hear anything about Christ. They are going to be caught by surprise. And it's seen in chapter 1, verse 7 to 12. And then the second part is chapter 2, which is warnings given against unrest caused by wrong views concerning the Lord's speedy coming. So Paul's trying to tell them that, hey, be careful, because people heard it differently, that Jesus is coming right now. There are warnings about that. So people might be causing an unrest, things that they are not supposed to. Okay, about his speedy coming, chapter 2, verse 1 to 2. And then the second part, which is number 2 in chapter 2, the announcement of events that will occur before Jesus is coming, before the advent. Okay, and then, which is part of chapter 2, the announcement, we see a coming apostasy. So Paul is going to take time to talk about that apostasy. Apostate means going back, or backslidden, going away from the faith that you once believed. So it's going to happen because of false information. So B, the self-exaltation of the man of lawlessness. The man of lawlessness is going to be Antichrist, the false prophet, and then the Antichrist. They are called Satanic Trinity. Okay, So the self-exaltation of the man of lawlessness. Chapter 2, verse 3 and 4. And then in due time, the lawless one will be revealed. And then accompanied by signs and lying wonders. So when Antichrist comes, it's going to show signs, but they are evil and wrong signs. And then he's going to lie. He's going to perform lying wonders, not true wonders. Chapter 2, verse 5 to 9. And then D of number 2 of chapter 2, which is the second part of the letter, D, is that this satanic personage is one of the Trinity. It is one of the satanic Trinity, Antichrist. So this satanic personage shall be destroyed at the coming of Christ. Jesus will come and destroy him. It's in the book of Revelation. So Paul reminded them again about the events, before, once Jesus comes, what's going to unfold, and which is chapter 2, verse 8. And then E, a mighty delusion shall deceive the wicked. You see, in life, many people believe what is common. This is what is going on. This is how do they say it? Like this is the current way of life. So the Antichrist, or one of the satanic trinity, will come with that. Or that now this is the new generation. This is what's going on. It's going to deceive many wicked people are going to be deceived. Many sinners. Chapter 2, verse 10 to 12. And then the third part of chapter 2 is an affectionate appeal to believers who had enjoyed the great privileges of the gospel to hold fast to sound doctrine. Because everything in life, everything as a Christian, everything depends on your understanding. You see, God said, due to lack of knowledge, a lot of my children are into captivity. So if you understand and you are able to know true teachings, wrong teachings, you are able to know how to follow Christ yourself, you're able to know how to talk to God, how to live your life. Chapter 2, verse 13 to 15. And fourth part of chapter 2 is a comforting benediction, which is chapter 2, verse 16 to 17. So he actually comforted them by blessing them. Okay, and then the third part of second book or second letter written to the Thessalonians falls in chapter number 3. So first part of chapter 3 is the apostles' confidence in the church. He requests their prayers be seasoned in prayer because of what's going to unfold, because as at their time to what was going on. B, he believes they will be kept from evil and be obedient to his commands. Chapter 3, verse 3 to 4. C, he enjoys upon them patient waiting for the advent of Christ and separation from the disorderly brethren. Because every generation will talk that Jesus can come. We're not saying that Jesus is coming, but Jesus can come at any time. That's how Paul wrote to them. So Paul is saying that it's good you are patient. If he comes in your time, fine. If he doesn't come until another generation, that's fine. But Jesus said we should preach about it, we should talk about it. So he said, be careful about the brethren who will be in disorder. Be careful about them. And then the second part of chapter 3 is that the apostolic example of orderly living. Paul says that live orderly, according to the way God wants you. Chapter 3, verse 7. And then B, of voluntary self-support for the sake of a good influence. Chapter 3, verse 8 and 9. Christianity is much more about doing things willingly. You give tithe voluntarily. Willingly, God will not force you. You go to church willingly. You go and witness for Christ willingly, even though it's a command, but God will not force you. You see, so Paul says the voluntary self-support for the sake of a good influence. Chapter 3, verse 8 and 9. And then C, of insistence upon industry on the part of believers, that it doesn't mean Jesus is coming so you don't work. Okay? Keep on working. Work for God and work for yourself. Go to work. Save money. So he insisted that continue in your industry, whatever that you are doing as a believer. Chapter 3 verse 10. And then the concluding admonitions, which is third part of chapter 3. A, concerning idlers and busybodies. Paul says, don't use the coming of Christ to just be idle and be busybody. Normally busybodies are they're normally the ones who gossip. Every day they need information. Paul said, no, use it for yourself, for the church, for Christ. Chapter 3 verse 11 to 12. B part, respecting persevering labor and recalcitrant. Okay, so you don't give up. Okay, respect that. When a Christian does not give up, they want to work for Christ no matter what they want to do. The only difference is that make sure a man of God does not manipulate you, which is chapter 3 verse 13 to 14. 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 13 to 14. And then the fourth part is the benediction and salutation, which is chapter 3 verse 16 to 18. And the prominent people in the book or the second epistle to the Thessalonians, or the book of 2 Thessalonians, is Paul the apostle, Timothy, and Silas. May the Lord richly bless you.